Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing some technical difficulties, but we're going to get on with the meeting due to the fact that it's past 7:30. And we can't get this fixed in the next 24 hours. I'm going to be coming to the council for some money because I can't take this PA system another month. And I think you'll agree. So it's an analog system from like 1912. Les may have been around then, but the rest of us. Did I hurt Mr. Lincoln? All right. So at this time, I'm going to ask the Danbury Council of Veterans to pass the colors. Please stand.
Monarch time. Come up.
Mr. Post, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Peace and honor. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order.
Chief Clerk, please lead us in prayer.
People of all faiths believe that to serve others is the greatest example of love among men. This week, the city of Danbury said goodbye to former Mayor James Edmund Dyer, who faithfully served the citizens of Danbury throughout his life. As college student at Westcon, state representative, and the youngest proactive mayor in our history. Mayor Dyer brought us into the age of computer technology as we approach the new millennium, even overseeing the direction of city streets to ease traffic congestion. Beloved son, brother, husband, father, James E. Dyer loved his family and the citizens of Danbury. There is no greater love. May God bless his family and console them. May God bless us with the wisdom and the good judgment to follow his example as we work to prudently do the work of the City Council. We pray too for the men and women of the armed forces, like Marine Lance Corporal Christopher Dyer, who serve protecting our way of life, that the author of liberty continues to protect them and their families. Amen.
Chief, I want to thank you for that prayer. I was going to have a moment of silence for Mayor Dyer, but I don't think we could beat any better testament than your remarks just now. So thank you very much on behalf of the Dyer family. Well done. Take your seats. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Arconti.
Present.
Curran.
Here.
Easton. Here. Riley. Seabury.
Present.
Stanley. Here. Taylor.
Here.
Bola.
Here.
Megashep. Alice.
Here.
Bravo.
Here.
Sadi.
Present.
Visconti.
Present.
Trombetta.
Present.
Knapp.
Here.
Nero.
Here.
Perkins.
Present.
Genies.
Present.
Marcello.
Here.
Scarpava. And Hutchins. Present.
Okay, with the record reflect the following. Mr. Riley is out of town on family business. Mr. Megashev is on a work-related trip, and Mr. Skazafava has a family event this evening. There being 18 present and 3 absent. At this time, without objection from the council, I'm going to suspend the rules as we have a special presentation tonight as it relates to the Danbury Council of Veterans, and then we'll roll right into our public speaking portion of the council meeting. So at this time, we'll begin the presentation from veterans. Mr. Post.
Okay, I have the distinct honor of introducing Mr. Dick Case, past president of the Vietnam Memorial Erection Committee, to make the presentation. Mr. Case.
was contacted by Colonel Albert Nahas, a former Army officer, West Point graduate, and Vietnam veteran, now living in Texas. He had spent the last 8 years visiting Vietnam War memorials all over the country because he wanted to create a historical record of all those he saw and selected to be in his book. His hope was that people would become aware of these memorials throughout the nation and would be encouraged to visit them whenever they were in any city or town in our country where they existed. So he personally went to these memorials to determine which ones, in his opinion, should be included in his book, Warriors Remembered. They were included because of their beauty, their message, or their backstory. His hope was that the book would become an atlas, if you will, for people, and in particular Vietnam veterans, visiting the areas where these monuments were located. He chose nearly 100 state and local memorials and also included the National Memorial of the War in Washington, D.C. All the memorials, of course, were erected to honor those who served, and specifically to honor those who died in that war. I discovered after discussions with him that he wanted to know what it was that motivated specific individuals in each case to pursue the time-consuming, sometimes frustrating efforts that resulted in each memorial. In essence, he wanted to know why each memorial was the way it was, why each had its own motif, why each founder felt it necessary to do what he had to do to result in the creation of the memorial. The book Warriors Remembered, being presented to the city of Danbury this evening, consists of about 100 stories of men and women who, after returning from Vietnam, were compelled in their own minds to see to it that a memorial would be designed and erected to provide not only a place to come to contemplate that war, but to leave a message to our posterity. As the founder, I am honored that he chose the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial to be one of the monuments included in his book because it recognizes the efforts of the members of the committee, the generosity of the people of Danbury and the surrounding towns, and the assistance of the city of Danbury. It also recognizes what I wanted the memorial to say about what I observed of the fighting men of this country doing a difficult job under very difficult circumstances. We all remember the way Vietnam veterans were received upon returning home. It was this reception and the ensuing criticisms that motivated me to design and create a memorial that said we were not only fighting men who did what our country asked us to do, but we were also compassionate men, and women who became aware of the people of Vietnam, and in particular the children of that country, who had to endure the war on a daily basis. I wanted to tell everyone that these tough fighters, when confronted with the plight of the children, reverted to being young kids themselves, older brothers and young fathers, if you will, all trying to make these children laugh and feel safe. These young soldiers were admirable and tremendous ambassadors for our country. This was the image that was denied them upon their return. The inclusion of this memorial and Warriors Remembered says that this goal was not only achieved locally in the greater Danbury area, but is now being recognized nationally, so that the veterans visiting the city of Danbury can now go to a memorial to remember what we truly were. Finally, I would like to thank once again and recognize the following key personnel of the Memorial Building Committee. Mr. John Hill, a Vietnam veteran, my co-chairman, and the other member of the founding committee. Mr. Jim Purcell, our treasurer, who is a World War II veteran, who handled all of the funds of the committee. Mr. Pat Walden, the Veteran Services Officer and the Korean War era veteran, who was essential in finalizing the list of the KIAs and MIAs of each town that appear on the memorial. Mr. Jack Barrows, who is deceased, was a local artist and Korean War era veteran who drew the memorial for us and created the image that was used for the entire fundraising effort. It also served to assist the sculptor, Mr. George Corus, in the creation of the statue. Representing her husband tonight is Mrs. Charlotte Barrows. I would be remiss in not remembering former Mayor James Dyer, who passed away last Tuesday. As mayor from 1979 to 1987, he was a powerful ally in the creation of this memorial. It is now my great pleasure, on behalf of the Danbury Veterans Council, to present Warriors Remembered to the City of Danbury. Thank you.
On behalf of the City of Danbury, I want to thank you for this wonderful presentation. I want to thank the Danbury Council of Veterans for being the guardians and the keepers of our Liberty Bell, our democracy, and our freedom here in the great city of Danbury. On behalf of the City Council, also, I know they're equally as grateful for your support and your hard work over these many years. And I just want to say welcome home. Welcome. God bless you. God bless America.
Okay, as a last remark, I'd like to thank the members of the veterans organizations that are attending tonight, the Veterans of Foreign War, the American Legion, the Disabled American Veterans, the Marine Corps League, the Catholic War Veterans, and the Korean War Veterans. I would also like to thank Councilman Tom Sadi and Council President Joe Cava and Marine Corps League member John Hill for working with Mayor Boughton in planning this night's presentation. And a huge thanks goes to Dick Case for his excellent presentation and the entire council for their continual support of Veterans Affairs. Thank you.
I also want to recognize you, our Director of Veterans Affairs, for your hard work on behalf of these veterans that you saw here today. Thank you for being here. God bless you. Mr. Taylor. And thank you, City Council, for your indulgence in that presentation. And we'll certainly send a letter of thanks to the Veterans Council for their generous gift to the City of Danbury. It is greatly appreciated. As roll has already been taken, we'll now move on to the public speaking portion of our City Council meeting. The first 30 minutes of each council meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council. You must be a resident and or a taxpayer of the City of Danbury to speak to the council, and you must speak to an item that is specifically on the agenda this evening. With that, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council this evening? Mr. Back.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Devine. I am chairman of City Center Danbury, also property owners of 261 Main Street, 2 I Street, and 5 I Street. I want to call your attention to item number 8, which is an expansion of the city center tax district. We have one property owner, Dan Bertram, who has offered up his lot to be included in our district. As you know, city center's goal is to keep the downtown vibrant and alive. I have a letter here from the property owner saying, "Dear Mayor Bowden, BRT supports the inclusion of our Kennedy Place parcel into the city service special service district. We believe that the development of Kennedy Place should contribute to city center and key partner along with the city of Danbury in our efforts to further invigorate downtown Danbury. We have been in contact with corporate counsel. They advised us to retain our own counsel, and we need 2 approvals. One is we need to approve us to get counsel, and the second one is to approve the amendment to our ordinance to increase our district."
Do you want to submit that letter?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Waller. Just talk real loud.
Okay. I'm Lynn Waller, 83 Highland Avenue in Danbury. I wanted to speak on number 3. I'm questioning whether we really want a cricket park. I don't know whether it's going to be in our Broadview Middle School field or just backed up to it. If it is in the field, I disagree with accepting the gift because I don't think, and I may be wrong, that we have any other groups using our individual playgrounds that are attached to the schools. So if there's any way that you could answer the question, I'd appreciate it. I wanted to speak to number 8 as well, which is the vote to include BRT in the downtown special district. I question only whether this would pass on to the residents if and when we get the condos or the apartments built there, because the 18,000 seems like a lot. As I remember, they are exempt from taxes for 7 years. I don't know how long that deal lasts, but when the condos are built, the residents who buy them don't have to pay taxes for 7 years. Will they have to pay this special district tax if it goes to pass? So I was just questioning that. I don't know if it's fair for him to offer stuff and then him not be part of it. It just seems unfair to me. And number 10, last Saturday, I drove past the clear-cutting area on Kennedy and Rose Street, and I was so shocked that I stopped the car and I got out and I asked the gentleman who was doing the cutting up the wood that was already on the ground, "What is this? I mean, it's been there for the 35 years I've lived in Danbury. What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, the city cut it down." And I thought, well, I guess if the city cut it's okay. But come Monday morning, I called 311 and talked to Jeff, who in turn talked to Frank, who looked into what was going on. I believe they were cutting on city property. It looks like the article came out today that said they were cutting on city property. It also looked like we were just going to ask them to replant some of that area. I don't know how you replant 35 to 50-year-old trees, and they have to be that old. I lived in Danbury 35 years, and they were here before me. So I would like to see them fined instead. I mean, I know it was a mistake, but the more often we do this, and developers, and it has happened in the past, have cut on property that is not theirs, and all they do is get their hands slapped and told to replant. Well, by then the damage is done. So I would like to see them pay more of a fine to the city if that's at all possible. I don't know how your ordinances work, but I think it should happen that way. And I don't think I really want to see us sell the property to the builder, because I can understand 4 condos there where the greenhouse is, if and when it's approved, but I don't want to see 5 more. And the way the article in the News Times was written, he was going to build his 4, and if he gets the city property, he's going to build 5 more. That's a teeny tiny little area to put all those condos in. Where are you going to park everybody? So I disagree with that whole thing. I mean, He was a bad boy as far as I'm concerned, and it looks like he's going to get rewarded for being a bad boy, and that upsets me. I wanted to also compliment the unit. I noticed that they had done 600 quality issues of life in their report. 1/3 of them were to clean garbage, and that's the best way to keep properties in the city clean, and I really appreciate their efforts. I saw in their report that FCI had sent the unit to help, and I think it was really good of you guys to work with them and then to work with us. So I wanted to make sure that I let you all know that I noticed and I
Further comments from the public? Is it up?
Ken Dogger, 89 Stadium Road, Connecticut. I'll speak on item number 1. Finding kind of confusing that we're going to discuss the sale of 13 acres on the end of Road. Last year we were here discussing this. I commended the council back then for wanting more information because we didn't have all the paperwork, stuff in the agreement to go forward with it. There was a lot of boilerplate and such that was going to be submitted to the council that was going to be ad hoc. And I don't know if they ever met. I'm disturbed, though, however, now we're talking about a sale rather than a lease. I was against the lease to begin with because it got money up front to help balance the budget, but then it was a 99-year lease, which meant they were going to be there forever. I found this to be disturbing because a number of years ago the city took the priority of gathering up more open space. We took out a bond, a $16 million bond, to purchase open space, and then here we are getting rid of 13 acres to try to pay off some debt. This kind of goes against the idea of acquiring open space and quality of life issues. So I have a problem with even considering a sale of this place. I didn't like the lease, and I definitely don't like the sale aspect. So when if you have an ad hoc on that, I wish you please consider that idea. The second one is number 10. Again, another land sale. You see a pattern here. I don't think the city should be selling off city property at this point. What's more disturbing is we had the developer come in front of the council, I believe, with a letter back in May 25th or something, 24th, asking for a tax abatement to do this project. I think we've learned from the BRT situation on Crosby Street that the tax abatements aren't really the best way to get them in there. We agreed with the tax abatement with BRT and Crosby, but then the rules changed. So I'm very skeptical of any more developers, especially residential developers, asking for tax abatements, especially when the city has got a financial crisis on hand. We're talking about cuts across the board and yet a tax abatement, but then the developer comes in and mistakenly clear cuts the hillside. Now, I've been in front of the EIC board enough times on environmental issues just in my area of Danbury alone to know that if that was a resident who made that mistake, they would have been hauled up in front of probably Corporation Council and a bunch of others due to no permitting, no erosion controls, no consideration of the typography, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we've got now rather large trees that were removed, and each tree absorbs at least 65 gallons of water a day. Now you've got nothing. On top of that, now you're coming in, the developer's coming in asking to purchase the property. It's kind of like, it doesn't look right. It kind of looks like a sabotage, but not. It's like an accident. But hey, now it doesn't look so good, so hey, maybe I can purchase this property, but maybe the citizens will think about if they'll clean it up. But then we open our door to more high-density development in this area, and is that what we really need? I mean, anybody that travels that area knows about the traffic, knows about the impact that we have there, and you know if they acquire this property now, once the lots are combined, your setbacks all change, which then you're going to have higher density down there. I think as opposed to that, the city should do as Ms. Waller suggested, we should make an example of this. We can't be going into these sensitive areas and destroying them and then saying, oops, I made a mistake, how about if I buy it from you? You're kind of setting a bad precedence. So I strongly urge you to not consider selling the property. Let's go back to trying to provide more environment, more open space, and let's really hold some of these developers accountable for what they're doing. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, any other members of the public, please attention.
Margaret Mitchell. My family owns property and are taxpayers on Main Street Park Place. I think number 1 has already been covered, and we'll go to ad hoc, that's good, so that we can hear some more about it. I'm probably the only one that has some questions and confusion about number 3, the donation to the Parks and Rec Department. During the recent things where the ad hoc was trying to find dog park land, I started looking at all our fields, and in a way we seem to have run out of playing fields because we've made fields for one purpose, like the volleyball courts in Rogers Park, where it used to be just a grassy area so you could put it to any game. And as we make more and more special purpose fields, we have less and less places for kids to do pickup sports or for their parents to take them over there and do sports with them. And we're taking away all these casual play spaces and turning them into something where you have to make arrangements in advance and get a permit and get a key, get on the lot. And the soccer field at Rogers Park had that happen. Those people that used to play on the field that's now AstroTurf now play on the blacktop next to the junior high. So I'm concerned about us restructuring the fields for special purposes. I also was concerned about number 8, but that'll have more light of day shown on it. And I also go by number 10, which was the purchase of city land at Ellis Lane and Kennedy Avenue. And I actually tried to convince the crew. My phone's smarter than I am. It gives you the city map, and it showed clearly that was city land. Well, obviously I failed because they and all, I think, I trusted them when they said they felt they had a permit. And I said, I can't believe you do for what you're doing. Maybe you have something for trimming up or getting rid of hazardous limbs or something, but I don't believe you're supposed to be clear cutting. But they seemed to believe that they were right, and as I say, my phone's smarter than me, so it's very hard to argue with people on that point. But I'm not in favor of giving out tax benefits or selling land to people. Let's let this developer handle this current situation of clear cutting on the city land, and then let's move forward. Let's, in that relationship with him, see where we want to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Kaczmarek?
Lynn Taversack, 110 East County Road, Danvers. And I want to speak briefly about item 1 and item 10. And in regard to both of them, I hope you'll remember that the state of Connecticut is going to require a public hearing for the sale of any city land. I saw in the mayor's request for an ad hoc committee that this 13 acres on the Bridgewater Road is somehow already implemented in 2011-2012 budget. So you may feel as though a decision has already been made. But I hope you'll consider that not creating any more open space, and that we may need these 13 acres that we currently own for the growth we're going to experience in our schools, for senior housing, for playing fields, this district says we're going on. So it has lots of uses They are very practical. Ditto for the Bells Lane property in Kennedy Avenue. Please be sure to hold the public hearing so that residents in Danbury can come and offer you their opinion.
Any other members of the public wish to address the council this evening? Mr. Jeff.
Good evening, Council. Michael Ayala. Speaking on behalf of the company which owns the property on Bells Lane, number 10.
Michael, you're a resident taxpayer?
Taxpayer.
You own that property?
Yep. Thank you.
And then, what's the exact address of the property?
64 Bells Lane.
64. Okay.
What we're planning on doing on Bells Lane, the development there at 64 is a complete separate issue from what's going on. We look forward to taking that house down. It's unfortunate that we're not able to save it. We're saddened by that. But we do look forward to making the neighborhood a little bit nicer. In regards to the tree clearing, I would like to sincerely apologize to the council. We had hired a tree company. We did meet with the city, and this is a permit which was issued, which if you want to enter that in the record. There's a tree permit which the city issued, which called for trees.
Just for the record, it wasn't to cut down the trees. Well, I mean, if you want to get in this discussion now, we can have it. Your permit was to cut down trees on Bells Lane. You clear cut all the way to the end of Kennedy Avenue. So don't even try to stand in front of this council and mislead them about what you did out there. You've got your cease and desist from Mr. Miller, our tree warden. He's very clear as the instructions he gave you. My suggestion is abide by your direction. Don't make it worse by coming up here and saying things that aren't correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to concur that we did have somebody meet with the tree warden, and that we did look, and the permit would say,
It says Bells Lane.
it does, and in the future...
That's not Bells Lane, that's Kennedy Avenue. You clear cut Kennedy Avenue property you don't own. You're doing real good up here. My suggestion is let us go on with our business. We can talk about this.
Thank you, and we are sorry for that. We've hired a landscape architect who's going to do draw up a render plan for this property, and we're going to make it right. An accident happened, you know, apparently it wasn't clear that there was communication error between the city and our contractor. We apologize for that.
There was no error between the city and your contractor. We were clear in our direction to them. So you got to stop saying it. You got to be clear to the council what your thoughts are. We'll take the apology. Put it while you're in.
Thank you. And, you know, as far as the rest of number 10 goes, you know, we will, I think one of the other residents had a great idea, and I hope the council will take that. Let us clean it up, and then we can revisit this and discuss this at the next meeting once it's all cleaned up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the council wish to address, members of the public wish to address the council this evening? Seeing none, then we'll go on with our...
I'm Henry Hall, 614 Drive, Danbury. I'd like to address item number 1. I think that Danbury should think long and hard before we give up our open space. Open space is precious. We're not building any more of it. We need to think long and hard before we decide to sell city property. We may be penny-wise and pound-foolish. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any other members of the public wish to address the council this evening? Seeing none, then we'll move on with our regularly scheduled meeting. We have a number of items and events that are in front of you, which we'd like to share them with you. First of all, August 8th is Mike Callis' birthday. Congratulations to you. August 14th is Phil and Janet Cola's wedding anniversary. August 21st is Mr. Perkins' 25th birthday. Congratulations. August 28th is Mr. Sheenese's birthday. Congratulations. There are a number of events that are happening this month. I'm just going to read off a couple of them to you. And this is by no means the complete scope of all the events. I know it'd be important that I share them with you. This weekend coming up is the Italian Festival at the Vespucci Ground on Christopher Columbus Boulevard. Avenue, excuse me. It's a wonderful event. We encourage members of the public watching this evening as well as council to watch it also. August 11th, we have a new Danbury Vet Center that will be opening at 457 North Main Street. You can contact Maureen Fitzgerald for the grand opening. We're going to do a ribbon cutting there to help service our veterans. August 15th is the 21st annual Sons of Portugal Scholarship Fund Golf Classic at the Ridgewood Country Club. We still need a few foursomes if you're interested. The 19th and 20th, Mr. Sadi, is the annual Maronite Church Lebanese Festival, Maharajan, and that's at 17 Granville Avenue. There is some parking challenges there. I think we're running shuttle buses as usual. From Westcon Garage to there. It's a great event, a lot of fun. Encourage the public to go to that. And also, obviously, support the church. August 24th, we are at Back to School Backpack Distribution at Stanley Run School. Thanks to all of the volunteers for making that happen for our children. August the 25th is the Danbury Housing Authority's annual senior picnic at Hatters Park. It's always a good time and very well done. I'd also like to mention that we had a terrific job done by the Danbury Dynamites, led by Coach Mike Hallis, the Cal Ripken 12-year-old travel team. They had a terrific effort in the New England regionals. They advanced very far. I think they lost in the semifinals, but they did a great job representing our city. And I want to congratulate Coach Murphy, Coach Backman, and of course Mike for preparing the kids for all the tournaments and for the excellent baseball play. Congratulations. This is by no means all the events for this month, and you certainly can check with Wendy in my office if you have other questions about best times to attend and so forth. With that, we're going to move to the minutes, please.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion at this time that as all members have received a copy of the minutes are filed in the legislative assistant's office, that we accept the minutes as presented.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Seaberg. Any deletions, corrections, or additions to the minutes as presented? Saying none, then I'll try your minds on acceptance of the minutes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, signify by saying nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Majority Leader, can we have the consent calendar, please?
Yes, sir, you may. Consent calendar for August 2nd, 2011 reads as follows. Number 4, receive communication and reappropriate $77,852.82 to the City Water Fund accounts and $138,917.47 to the Sewer Fund accounts for equipment purchases and purchase orders covered prior to June 30, 2011. Number 5, receive the communication and reappropriate $515,990.21 to the General Fund for open purchase orders encumbered prior to June 30, 2011 for ongoing capital projects from prior fiscal years. Number 6, receive the communication and reappropriate $24,015 to the Ambulance Fund to complete outstanding projects encumbered prior to June 30, 2011. Number 12, receive the communication and adopt a resolution to allow the City of Danbury, in conjunction with the Danbury Youth Service, to apply for and accept grant funding from the State of Connecticut Department of Education. This funding not to exceed $70,000 for the next 2 years will be used to support youth and family counseling, crisis intervention, and substance abuse prevention. Number 13, receive the communication and adopt a resolution to allow the City of Danbury Health and Human Services Department to enter into an agreement with the State of Connecticut Department of Agriculture. Funds received in the amount of $1,085.50 are to be used in supplemental staffing of a WIC program to issue farmers market checks to eligible participants during the summer of 2011. Number 14, receive the communication, adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor or the director of emergency management to execute the Region 5 Memorandum of Agreement. This memorandum allows the City of Danbury to receive funds to conduct training, purchase equipment, and receive money for the EMPG. Number 15, receive the report of the city engineer for the sanitary sewer extension on Deepwood Drive and Craigmore Terrace, project number 10-21, and take no further action. Number 16, receive the report by city engineer and planning commission and approve the request for water and sewer extensions for the shops of Marcus Gary / Sugar Hollow Road Associates at Sugar Hollow Road. 17, receive the reports of the city engineer and planning commission and approve the renewal of application for sanitary sewer and water main extensions, including the 9th condition as indicated in the city engineer's report, Reynolds Road / BG Partners. Number 19, receive the reports Corporation Council, City Engineer, and Planning Commission and approve the proposed road extension and drainage easement on Spruce Mountain Trail as petitioned by 34 Spruce Mountain Terrace LLC. And number 20, receive the report of the ad hoc committee and adopt the recommendation to authorize the finance director to establish a budgetary line item of $2,800 from the contingent fund on behalf of the Historic Properties Commission, only to be released at time with grant approval and to follow reimbursement procedure as specified by the Finance Department, and that, sir, is a consent calendar for August 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Matt?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second. Made second by Mr. Perkins. Any changes to the consent calendar as presented? Sorry, Mr. Nelson.
He doesn't have any competition tonight to shake on. He told him to speak up.
Never mind. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the consent calendar, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 1, please.
As you recall, we had an agreement.
Just read that. Just read the communication.
Oh, communication, number 1.
Don't read the whole letter. Just read off the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Request for ad hoc Old Ridgebury Road.
What's your pleasure, counsel? Mr. Trabetta.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to receive the communication and refer to an ad hoc committee consisting of report from Planning Commission, Corporation Council, and a representative from the Mayor's Office.
Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following: Mr. Seabury in the chair, Mr. Negasha, and Mr. Shianese. Madam Clerk, item 2, please.
Donation to the police department.
Okay, this one you got to do.
Members of the Common Council, Mayor Mark D. Bowden from Allen D. Baker Chief of Police. Permission is requested to accept a donation of $10,000 from the Richfield and Mayor Foundations Incorporated in memory of Henry J. and Erna D. Lee. The funds will be placed in the donations account 6,000.2000 and used for the K-9 program for the Danbury Police Department. Alan D. Baker, Chief of Police.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, counsel? Mr. Cola.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make it a motion to accept the communication and the donation of $10,000 from the Richfield and Lear Foundations Incorporated in memory of Henry and Erna Lear, with the funds being placed in the donations account 6,000-2,000 for the K-9 program of the Danbury Police Department and an appropriate letter of thanks sent to the foundation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Shianese. Any discussion about the donation? Seeing none, I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, signify by saying aye. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 3, please.
Dear Mayor Broughton and council members, the Danbury Cricket Club would like to erect a practice cage in the back of Broadview Middle School field. Placing this cage on the school grounds will allow for members of the club to practice without having to use the grass area of the complex. This will also give more people an opportunity to learn the game of cricket. A contractor will install the fencing and the club will build the pitch inside the cage. The estimated value of this donation is $4,000. I request that this generous donation be accepted at the next meeting of the City Council. If you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Nicholas Kaplanis, Director of Recreation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, counsel? Mr. Seabury.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move that we accept this generous gift and send the appropriate letter of thanks to the offer.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Cabo. Would you like Mr. Kaplanis to come forward, Mr. Cabo? Understanding you've had oral surgery, Mr. Kaplanis, do the best you can, but there were some questions raised in the public comment section. If you could address those for the edification of our council.
Doesn't work. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
First, I want to put everyone's mind at ease. We're not changing anything at Broadview that's going to impact any of the other activities that take place there. The cricket club has been playing cricket there for at least 7 or 8 years, since before I even got on the job. They created what they call a patch, which is the area right in the middle of the field that they use as the starting point.
We have a discussion of the rules of cricket first, please.
That would take some time. You got 4 hours? That would take some time. But that field is a multi-use field. We use it for lacrosse, we use it for flag football, we use it for regular football, we use it for cricket, and there's any number of other people that might be out there kicking the soccer ball around or practicing softball throughout the course of the year. We try to get as much use out of all the facilities that we can, and you'll find there's a variety of activities that we can take place in many of the schools and down in the parks. So we're not really changing anything within that complex. This cage is similar to a batting cage. If you look down at Rogers Park or over at Hatters Park or at the high school, you're going to create a pitch and then put a cage around it so they can actually go inside and practice hitting the cricket ball. This allows us to continue to use the field for other activities while they're there practicing. Because a lot of times we might have a lacrosse game going and they want us to come in and practice, but because of where the pitch was located, it made it impossible to do it. So this was brought to me. We're going to place it in the far back corner of the facility. It will not interfere with any of the other fields that we set up throughout the course of the year.
Okay, questions from the council, Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks. You answered a couple of questions already. Is this immovable? So
once it's placed, it will be
permanent.
Permanent. They're going to create the pitch, which is basically taking an area and it's like creating an infield. It's made of clay, and they put in something, underneath the drainage, and put down the clay. It's about 4 or 5 feet wide by about 40 to 50 feet long, and then the cage will encompass that whole area.
So, let's just say someone's playing football and ran off the field or ran into the end zone. How far away is it from there? Or?
I couldn't give you exact, but I'll say it's at least 20, 30 yards.
Beyond the end zone?
Yeah, well, keep in mind that the grass facility there at Broadview is mostly for practice. The cross plays their games in there. There is no end zone. If the ball goes out of bounds, it's out of bounds. But any of the other activities in there, there's no formal games that are going on. And I don't think that you're going to find that they're going to be there every day. I mean, they play their matches on the weekends from May through early September. So it's not like this is going to be an everyday thing when they're going to be in there using it. Plus, they want to expose some of the younger kids game, and this is a great way for them to learn about being inside.
Maybe I wasn't making myself clear. I'm just trying to figure out this whole donation will be on the turf.
No, this is on the grass side of Broadview, the hospital side.
To the right of the school, not on the left. Down to the lower field is between next to the hospital.
Okay.
Back in the corner. Mr. Rotello.
Yeah, thanks. To the chair, to the director. The pitch sounds okay. It's fairly innocuous. I'm a little concerned about the cage. That sounds like a fairly sturdy structure and permanent. If somebody whacks into it, are they going to get injured? I mean, is it one of those issues, or is it catted, anything?
It's going to be, fence posts in the ground with fencing around it and netting on the top. It's no different than the batting cage down at Rogers Park, Highland Avenue Park, Cameron High School. It's an area where you can go in and hit a ball, an object, and it stays confined within that area. So, I mean, there's no reason for anyone that would actually be, to run into it because it's far enough away from any, structured activity that's going on there. Even when cricket is played on that field, they use that entire grass area. I mean, it's a pretty wide open game the way that it works without getting into all the specifics of it.
So you're satisfied it's not a hazard?
Yeah. Well, we went, we walked it, we measured it off. We have a proposal as far as where it's going to be, and I don't see it interfering with anyone or anything.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Sheen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Crowell, quick question. The hours of operation of the cage, when the cage is not in use, will it be available to any other residents that want to use the cricket
I
cage?
suppose if you wanted to try the game of cricket, you probably could go in there and take a few whacks at that ball.
So it will be available?
Yeah.
It won't be locked at a certain time?
We didn't discuss, we didn't really get into the discussion of that. I'd have to see, what their intention is on it, but I don't think they would mind anyone going in.
We do lock.
They may lock it up in the
Some
winter.
of our cages just to protect against vandals. In general, the owner of the club, if they can figure out what to do. Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, to Mr. McManus. Nick, are you aware of any other sports that may be coming to us?
I get requests for different sport activities all the time. There's frisbee golf. I mean, there's handball courts. I mean, we offer a variety of different activities throughout the city. I mean, there's constantly people that are looking for something more than what is currently offered. I try my best to accommodate everyone I can, and sometimes they have to to say no. And if there's something worth investigating, we will.
We still have plenty of room for all of the other activities that
absolutely
take place with both fields being used. Okay, when you get down there, could you look back down to Rogers Park and look at the lights and the noise?
Okay. And the noise.
Mr. Sadi, then Mr. Connell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Of course, I'd like to accept donations like this and to broaden the scope of our public parks and what's done there. One council member mentioned the issue of hours of use. Of course, I wouldn't want the cricket club to think that they have any possessory or property ownership in this cage, of course, and that's what I think you're saying here. I want to be clear on the record that once this is built, anybody could use it just like any other aspect of any of our parks, unless it's locked up to protect from vandalism, just like some of the other cages might be. That they have, and make it clear for the record, no sort of priority in using this over somebody else who gets there first. Is that accurate to say?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Everything that we do through my office is issued by permit. So if you want to use a facility, you're going to come to me and say, hey, I would like the time slot, to use whatever happens to be. And I mean, scheduling is a big part of any of the things that we do there. But again, we try to accommodate everyone we can. If I don't have an open slot, I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to say, today, Mondays and Fridays are good, or Saturdays are good at this time. And everyone is pretty good about, adhering.
I just want to make sure, hypothetical, that it's treated just as any other public property.
Yeah. Listen, Danbury Youth Baseball has batting cages down there. If somebody wants to go in there and hit the ball, they're not off limits to them either. And they erected it as well.
Okay. The other issue with regard to not so much liability, first built, but maintenance of the facility, of the cages and of the pitch. Will that be an obligation of your department?
The club will maintain the pitch and the cage, obviously. The netting that goes along with it, just like any other group, the ones that they have. The pitch, even that it currently exists in the middle of the field, it's there now. In the springtime, in the wintertime, they'll cover it with a tarp, try and preserve it. They usually do a little repair work in the spring when they take the tarp off before they get ready to play. The same thing will occur inside.
But is there going to be, a couple of questions here, a maintenance agreement where they are going to contract with that they will take certain steps to maintain it? And then the second question is, if they don't, it's going to be built, it's going to be there. Presume that your department then is going to be responsible for maintaining it. Maybe not necessarily the pitch, but the cage or remove it. It's not just going to sit there and sort of fall apart.
Again, the use of any of these cages, if there's a repair that's been done, it's fallen under the responsibility of the group that uses it. We haven't talked about the city doing anything with it in particular. I know the pitch that currently exists is being maintained by the club. So I don't see any reason why
the pitch, if I'm correct, is it's flush with the ground pretty much, as opposed to, they're talking about building a cage with netting next to a school, or near a school, on adjacent property. And I just want to make sure that someone is going to be maintaining it. If they're not going to be maintaining it, that our departments are going to know that, well, the maintainer to take it down if it costs too much to maintain it if it's not being used. Maybe not your responsibility now, maybe somebody else is down the road. But I just want to make the records clear.
Well, knowing the people that I've been dealing with for the 5 years that I've been on the job, they are very responsible people, and I have no doubt that they're going to put this money out of their own treasury and they're going to take it.
And I'm sure they are, and I've heard great things about the Brick Club. My concern always with these and other things is we always want to put the face of the person who we're dealing with right now on the project, but we must always be concerned at other faces that will be running organizations down the road and make sure that whatever projects we approve are done in a way to make sure when there's different people in charge, the rules are still applicable. So that's all I want to make sure.
Okay, well, that's always a fear I have when there's changes in leadership with any group. They're always in contact with me. And with individuals that have been involved since I've been involved, they're very easy to work with. They're more than willing to accommodate anything that I ask of them.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Cowell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Plannis, in our discussion this afternoon, we've had it tonight, just for the membership of the council, I just wanted to be clear. This cricket club's been in play for how long on that field?
At least 7 years that I'm aware of. It started back with Bob Ryerson in this position.
And they have, through the 7 years, or at least through your tenure here, have performed and taken care of that field.
We're hoping anymore.
We're hoping to satisfy Mr. Shai's concern by saying that we hope that they will continue to do that. And if not, I'm sure the city will have to step in and take care of it.
Like with any other organization.
Well, I'm glad that cricket players want to do this and they want to invest that in their field and go in peace, cricket players.
Mrs. Stanley, you have the floor.
You explained earlier that it's similar to a batting cage. Is it, and can you also explain, what is the pitch?
The pitch it's a clay surface. It's about 5 feet wide by 30 or 40 feet long. And, I mean, without going into a formal demonstration, they actually wind up and throw the cricket ball, and the guy's at the other end with this bat. It's like a...
Do they call that a bat? Is that the proper term?
I'm sorry.
Do they call that a bat?
Well, they don't call it a bat, and I don't recall what they call it. But they try to strike the ball with that.
So
It's like a pad.
and you said it's similar to a range bat. Is there any possible way of doing it? Can it be multi-purpose or is it going to restrict? Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Can somebody use it for like softballs for baseball? It can be.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Nero.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Plannis, going back to what Councilman Sadi mentioned, I'm wondering who has the responsibility whenever a private entity wants to put a structure such as this on city property. So I understand the discussion that you had. You said that it's a great organization and they'll take care of it. So I follow that whole thing. But it seems in the dialogue that you had, it wasn't clear to me that there was going to be something that was written that would say, this now is yours and you are responsible for it. And as the mayor mentioned earlier, we do lock things up to prevent vandalism. So I don't know what could happen to the structure, but if something happened to it, it'd be nice to know that the city would not use
fencing and netting. I mean, you can, in the off season, you can lock it up. You can take the netting down. I mean, people cut into fencing and fall apart.
Do we have a formal arrangement when we never use baseball? Is there a maintenance agreement for the batting cages down there?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, if there's a problem...
So we would be treating them differently than we would be treated other organizations? I'm just saying.
If I ask them to maintain it, they will maintain it.
Yes, sir. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing on that.
I don't know. I don't understand what it should. I understand the comment about someone saying that we're singling them out or whatever the case may be. But it just seems to me that when someone puts a structure on city property, it just seems to me that there should be something written that says you are now responsible for it. I don't want to belabor the point at this juncture, but that just seems to me to make sense.
And I'll be honest, I have not, looked or investigated that, but with all the changes that exist in Danbury, that have been there quite some time, we've never had any issues that I'm aware of that have created any problems for anyone. I mean, if they get damaged or, things wear out, they've been replaced. I know Danbury Youth Baseball replaced one of the cages, the netting, one of the cages in the backfield several years ago because the netting rotted out. It was just, it gets brittle and the balls were getting hit and they were going through it. So they replaced it and that came out of their treasury. I would make that same assumption with the cricket club or with any other organization, whether it's PAL softball up at Hatters or the high school.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. House.
Mr. Compliance, I'd just like everyone to know, because I don't think Mr. Nero knows that Denver Youth Baseball maintains all their own equipment down there. I'd like to recognize Mrs. Stanley's given many donations also in recent years for their husband. But they maintain their own equipment, and there's no formal agreement or licensing or anything like that was ever arranged. And I think anybody can testify that knows Rogers Park and Denver Youth Baseball, everything is top notch.
Denver Youth Baseball has donated thousands of dollars over the last several years. And they do a great job in maintaining theirs. And with the cricket club putting up basically $4,000 for this, I can assure you they're going to take care of it as well.
Okay, any other discussions or comments? Mr. Seabury?
I'd like to move the question.
We're now on moving the question. I think we were ready to vote, but that's okay. All in favor of moving the question, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. At this time, we're down to the main motion.
Like noted for the record, Your Honor.
Mr. Rosati, Mr. Visconti, Mr. Cheney, Mr. Perkins, and 4 in the negative and 18 in the positive. Or excuse me, 14. 14 in the positive. At this time, we're on the main motion. All in favor of accepting the donation, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimously. Items 4 through 6 were consent. Madam Clerk, item 7, please.
Time extension sewer, 9 Zinn Road.
What's your pleasure, Council? Mrs. Stanley?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to refer this to planning and city engineering for report.
Seeing no objection, is so ordered. Madam Clerk, item 8, please.
Communication, expansion, city center district.
What's your pleasure, Council? Mrs. Teichel?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to refer this to an ad hoc committee consisting of the executive director of City Center, the planning director, corporation counsel, and a representative from the mayor's office.
Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following. Mr. Don Taylor in the chair. Mr. Taylor. Good. Mr. Don Taylor. It's that finger now.
I think it's the single finger, yeah.
They don't think it was
Now we'll do that. I think we're good.
We're good? Okay, let's try it again. Mr. Don Taylor in the chair, Mr. Cabo, and Mr. Nero. Madam Clerk, item 9.
Communication, reconsideration to purchase city land, Lake Avenue extension.
What's your pleasure, council? Mr. Callow.
Your Honor, I'd like to refer this to an ad hoc appropriation council, the city engineer, and the report from the planning commission.
Ad hoc shall consist of the following: Mr. Jack Knapp in the chair, Mrs. Teichels, and Mr. Rotello. Madam Clerk, item 10, please.
Communication, request to purchase city land, Bells Lane and Kennedy Avenue.
What's your pleasure, council? Mr. Seabury.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to refer this to an ad hoc appropriation council, director of public works, and planning commission for report.
Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following: Mr. Greg Seabury in the chair, Mr. Knapp, and Mr. Visconti. Madam Clerk, item 11, please.
Communication, acceptance of city road and drainage easement, Chestnut Street.
What's your pleasure, council? Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to refer this to the Corporation Council, City Engineer, and Planning Commission for report.
Seeing no objection, is so ordered. Items 12 through 17 are on consent. Madam Clerk, item 18, please.
Report, statement of condition in fire department.
The entire board, what's your pleasure, council? Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Your Honor. Make a motion to receive the report of the fire chief on the statement of the condition of your property, Danbury Fire Department City Code Ordinance 8-13.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Rotello. Discussion regarding the chief's annual statement of report. Mr. Sinisi.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to put my question to Chief Harold.
Chief Harold, please.
You mentioned in your report the need regarding the TFAP emergency dispatch center and the equipment there. And it's stated in here about the immediate need for repairs and improvements, and also that the equipment is not currently being used. I'm sorry? You said the equipment that's installed, but it's not currently being used.
That's the equipment at the new police department.
Correct.
Correct.
But it's the same exact report that you said 2 years ago,
Very similar, yes.
and it's almost exactly the
Same
same.
exact.
So my question is, what is really going on? I mean, is there really a need, and should we act as a council sooner than later?
Is there really a need for
A need for the replacement of the radios and the equipment that's stated in the report?
Absolutely. The city has done a study on the replacement of the radios, and everybody recognizes that the radio systems do need to be updated and replaced. Chief Baker and I have been working with the mayor and finance director. The study that was done shows it's a very expensive proposition, because to bring things up to where they need to be, I'm not going to remember the exact number, but a macro study.
$10.5 million.
$10.5 million. And obviously, when that came due in 2008-9, when the report was done, it's not something that the city can obviously come up with. But that would solve everything. That's a global fix for everything. It would tie in all the emergency services as well as public works to allow any communications, which is really the gold standard that's being put forth by FEMA and any of the national organizations for emergency communications. However, it can't be financed locally very readily. Very few places can do that, unless you're Boston or maybe New York City. And even they're having serious difficulties with theirs. So even they're not any better off than we are in any way. So yes, it does have to be fixed. We have some deadlines coming up with the federal government regarding it's called the narrow banding, which is a requirement that's going to be put into place January 1st of 2013, I believe. That would be included in all this. And some of those are little things we can do to fix it, but the global fix is really what the target is, and it's just not something that's feasible right now. The things that we're doing, we're making things work. We're doing well with what we have, but it's not obviously stepping us up to the next generation.
In the past reports that you kept mentioning that the repair parts are harder to come by. What I'm hearing now that those repair parts are no longer existing. Is that true?
On some of the articles that we have, what they've had to do is find old places that have retired our similar parts to get parts for us. Because the original installations are no longer being done, they're no longer being made, they're no longer being supported. And we find parts, it's basically like going to a scrapyard and making some of ours work. Now, that doesn't mean they're not working, because we have been able to get them to keep working with that, and that is something that we would anticipate generally be able to do. Last year, the city was able to fund a key part of that, and we did replace a major component, so now that's brand new, state-of-the-art. And that was one of the things that we were really concerned for, so that is fully operational. There are other bits and pieces that we're having some of these issues with.
And if I could just interject, Mr. Shanisi, because these are important questions that you're asking. You also want to be careful not to confuse the consoles, which are antiquated, with the radios, right? So there's two separate parts here. So when you mentioned the new police station, when we migrate over to a unified, centralized dispatch, which we have a team working on that right now internally, not the regional. First step will be just with our own team, fire and police, EMS working together. Some of those console issues are done. We'll be using the equipment in the new TV. We may have to order some parts. Mr. St. Clair and I are working on that. That'd be the first step. Second step will be the regionalization. And then the third step will be to address the global radio situation. So eventually, theoretically, when we're on a regional basis, our public works could talk to, for example, Newtown's public works on the same frequency, using the same system. That's our long-term goal. But it's an expensive proposition, as the chief mentioned.
So just to recap, so based on your report, you're confident that the current radio could sustain your current operation, of the few of them actually going down anytime soon?
Obviously, they're mechanical devices. I can't say one won't fail tonight, for example. That can always happen. When you think, am I comfortable that they're working now? Yeah, I am. And we maintain them as well as can be expected right now. I don't anticipate any kind of a critical failure in short notice, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. But just like anything, a brand new device could fail as well. So there's no guarantees. Not at all.
Thank you, Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, to the chair. Chief, the console that we're using now, is that the same one that we started, we put in for 911? Is that the original console?
No, it's a second generation. The third generation is what's now being in. I think the third generation is the one that's actually coming in this next, as we're talking about it. The consoles that we're using for 911 are state-of-the-art, and the consoles that are actually in the police station are state-of-the-art. As we said, there's obviously, there's a difference between our radio communications and our 911 center. The thing that we're really concerned about is that next step, I guess it'll be the fourth generation, if you will, of 911 that's coming in. And some of the things that's driving that is something that we're not there yet. We don't need to be. But it's being driven nationally. I believe the fourth generation just went in last year in Oklahoma or someplace. It's the first one in the country.
Well, this is
Good question. Getting back to the radio system, let's disregard the console and 911. The radio system, the handheld portables and the radios in the machine and the ambulance and so on. Are we having any major dead spots in the city that you're aware of?
Not major, but there are still a few that have been there off and on. We actually are in the process now of trying to fill in some of the gaps. We filled in a significant gap over on what we call Route 7 South going down towards Richfield. That was always a dead area for us. That was kind of generally fixed. I have a couple of areas literally in valleys of hills where the radios will fade out and then come back in on the other side. We're trying to make a few improvements by putting a new tower back up on King Street by the volunteer firehouse up there where 25s is. We're going to put that antenna back up there and use that. That'll fill in the gap out there. We've made some approaches to some of the new cell towers going up, considering trying to put transmission towers on some of them as well. And these are stopgap measures versus the $10.5 million, which we just don't have.
Thank you.
Any further discussions? Yes, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Ron. Chief, has the department looked into seeking out grants or any other kind of funding?
Every day we're looking for grants, and anybody's going to give me money, I'm going to sign the paper. After coming to you, of course, to see if I can accept it. Yeah, absolutely. We've looked at grants, and unfortunately, they're becoming harder to find. They're drying up. And as a matter of fact, I just got notification last week of a grant for $1.2 million that I didn't get. But we were in the final running. But yeah, we try grants in any way we can.
Follow-up. I remember seeing a report very similar to this that came across the council. Based on what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like it's kind of urgent. And if that is true, it really should have been moved higher on the scale, at least in my opinion. But we've been spending a lot of money around here, based on what I would consider wants and not necessarily needs. This is something that sounds to me like a need.
I would consider it a need, but at the same time, remember, we've got a couple other things in the works that are actually giving us a little leeway here. And until the police and fire are actually in the same place, both broadcasting and 911 is down at the police station, until that happens, there's some of these things that we really can't completely address. As far as the radio system is concerned, like I said, we're beginning to fill in some of those gaps, and Chief Baker is working on his side as well, with some recent acquisitions through his side. So we're actually doing fairly well. But we all recognize that it's not the global fix that we need at the end of this. And when that comes, obviously we'll be coming to you to make that happen. But, it is out there. Yes, it's a need. The 2013 federal date that's changing, some of that we can do in-house. Some of it has to be new equipment. But we've got a year and a half to do that now, and that's kind of where we're looking at.
One last question. That convergence, that's a year and a half away, you said?
Yeah, 2013, January 1st. A year and 5 months, whatever it is.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Chief engaged in some stopgap measures to address some of the communication issues and looking at new systems and future systems. But you say on page 5 in your report some immediate future needs, and I can see this coming before those on the council next year. A new aerial, pumper, and 3 sedans. Can you just estimate the cost that we're looking at, I think, would this be in the next year or two, of those 5 items, aggregate?
New aerial, okay, so 3 sedans they're inexpensive. They're probably $45,000, between $45,000 and $60,000, $15,000 to $20,000 a piece per sedan. Engine company, as you know, 2 years ago you bought 2 for us, and they were roughly $500,000 a piece.
On the pumper?
On the pumper. And the aerial device, last year's estimate was $982,000.
About $1.5 million for these 5 items.
That's a fairly good estimate, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I want to thank Chief for his, first of all, some splendid attire this evening. The shirt's a little iffy. But also for his very thorough report. We appreciate your statements of conditions each year, Chief. Well done. At this time, I'll entertain a motion on the floor to accept this report. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Joining consent. Mr. Campbell, let's do the department reports now. Then we'll move to executive session so our department heads can be released.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the reading of the departmental reports as all members have copies, and copies are on file in the legislative assistant's office for review.
Second.
Being seconded by Mrs. Dyson, let's move to discussion of the department reports. Discussion of the department reports. Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to say real quick, congratulations to several of the firefighters for clawing their way through a physics course that was offered by a partnership that the mayor helped set up, which we notified about community college. People like yourself, Deputy Chief Guido, training officer Master, all made that possible. So congratulations to the firefighters for close to graduation.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Sadi.
Through you to Mr. Ardiarolo.
Mr. Ardiarolo.
Oh, I don't have my glasses on. On your report, whether you or someone within your department can update us. There's a matter on our agenda, the issue has come up several times in public speaking regarding the tree removal between Bell Lane and Kennedy Ave. Could you just, without going into matters that may involve litigation, just tell us what remedial steps are being taken by the city? We saw a copy of the permit here, for whatever it's worth. Can you explain to us what's happening over there right now? There's read some articles in the paper. I'd like to hear it firsthand.
Sure. We have asked the police department to get involved in investigating the incident.
Speak up a little bit more.
Sure. We have asked the police department to get involved in investigating the incident. 2 officers did come out, I believe it was yesterday, and they are actively investigating the incident. We had multiple meetings with the contractor and the property owner to start discussions regarding, 1, the cease and desist, 2, restoration, and we are working with our corporation counsel to see what other actions may be appropriate.
Mr. Miller did issue a very extensive order leak this afternoon.
That's correct. Yeah, I came, he worked with myself, our secretary today, and officially sent it certified mail. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to find some way to restore the property. It will be done to our satisfaction. And we're also going to enhance our permit process so there is no wiggle room, and there's clearly not going to be any potential for misunderstanding, cutting on one road and going over to another road. So that's what we're doing internally to try to prevent this from happening. I'm going to tell you, we're all shocked. Quite a few of us are beyond shocked that somebody would take this leap and this bound in a permit. But we're working with the owner of the property and the contractor. The contractor's been very, very good at responding to our request for 1, cleanup, 2, removal of the chips, and 3, stabilization. The final step will be replanting.
Thank you. You see your work in decision. Mr. Seabury.
I'd just like to take a moment for Chief Carroll to thank him and Mr. Cabo for the presentation for the tremendous.
Chief, thank you. Further discussion on department reports. If you see none, then I'll try your mind for acceptance of department reports. Just signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition, motion carries unanimously. Department heads, with the exception of Mr. Shepard, Mr. St. Hilaire, Mr. Pinter, Mr. Yannon, are released. See you in the morning.